He is our favorite Britisher. You may say, really? There's so many Britishers, like more than Mick Jagger or Sting and that's just music, politicians there in Great Britain or the royalty. Well, we took a staff vote, and Anthony Davis, the sharp political commentator whose daily briefings have become a regular part of American life, he won our staff poll. He is our favorite Britisher. Put it together for Anthony Davis.
I want to know how many people on that staff that voted.
Look, you people who question the vote are really getting to be a pain in my ass.
Right?
All right?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more than me, trust me, in the coming months.
There is a seed that has been sown, and it's now become a political tactic, really, in this country to question the vote, right?
Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump was questioning the 2016 vote before it happened,
right,
and questioning the 2020 vote before it happened. And the line was, if I don't win, it must be fraud. Except when you do win, then is it still fraud? I mean, who knows?
It's exactly right. Anthony's so right on when he talks about the fact, and this goes back to something that I had alluded to just kind of in a passing comment. The Trump people didn't expect to win the 2016 election. They weren't even prepared to win. They weren't even really trying to win, many of them. They were trying to burnish the brand of Trump. And in that same way, they were sort of prepared to put up some kind of protest about why he lost or explanation about why he lost. And then when he actually won it, they still floated a bit of that, didn't they, Anthony Davis? I mean, remember he had that whole thing about millions voted illegally in New England, and he actually put government money into an investigation about that.
I mean, I think they're still coming to terms with the fact that they won, because he certainly wasn't ready to be in the White House. I mean, he didn't know anything about government, he didn't know anything about international trade, didn't know anything about protocols, and you would probably want to gen up on some of that stuff if you think you're going to win. But I mean, I read that he was planning on setting up a TV station, like a Trump TV channel.
Yeah.
And that was what he was hoping to promote by pretending to want to be the president for a year or so. I would say, because I'm still kind of getting over the ABC Washington Post poll from a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw that, but it actually put Donald Trump ahead of Joe Biden in the general. And, look, these polls are all pie in the sky, and you can make anything come out the way that you want it to come out. But if we are complacent about wanting or allowing an authoritarian into office in the U.S., it will happen. It's not a two-horse race. You've got one guy who's too old but is doing it to save America from fascism. And then you got another guy who's the fascist, the authoritarian, who's not even hiding it. I mean, if you've read any of the stuff that's been published by Project 2025, which is this 900-page document, which details exactly the authoritarian plan for any Republican president in 2024. It doesn't have to be Trump. It's whoever they, install. It's written by the Heritage Foundation. You'll realize that, this is really scary stuff. And I never thought that the U.S. would ever become one of those countries where they gas their own citizens or prevent people from accessing health care or any of the things that have changed in the last few years.
Well, you'll remember during the Trump administration, he wanted to know why we can't, shoot these protesters in the legs,
That's right.
Just shoot them in the, it's a total disconnect, but it is the sort of thing that, an authoritarian would want to do. And it's interesting you mentioned this Heritage Foundation plan and strategy because, in a way, Donald Trump is a perfect candidate for that. I mean, should he ascend to office again? Because he's completely disinterested in ruling, and he's only interested in recriminatory, charges that he can gin up from the Justice Department. He can even, get his IRS to go after certain enemies of his, and I think he's proven that with the FBI agents who were, who were the investigators on the part of the FBI who then ended up getting audited. It was a bizarre thing that both of them got, a random audit. Come on. But more to the point. He is so disinterested that the dismantling of government, the sort of Steve Bannon-esque way that they could pursue that, and it's very much detailed, as you say, in that Heritage Foundation strategy, he's perfect to implement that because he has no real opinions of his own beyond those that I just mentioned.
He's an empty vessel, you know.
Right.
I mean, this is why the Russians wanted him years ago and identified him as a mark that they could support to kind of push towards wanting to be the president, run for the presidency, because he's so dumb about that type of stuff. And if you compliment him because of the narcissism, if you compliment him, then he'll like you. It really is as simple as that. And so people know how to use him and abuse him. You remember, you know, the briefing documents, the security documents where they had to write Trump's name every third word to keep him interested in and turn it into a one-pager. And in the end, do you remember he said, if there's something important in it, they'll tell me. Why do I need to read it? You know, that was the moment I was like, how have we not had World War III? And now he's talking about executing the former Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, like executing him. Like he posted that the other day. Mark Milley was the guy who kept us safe for 4 years. He was the guy that spoke to his counterpart in China and said, look, I know Trump's saying all this crazy stuff about China, but trust me, you know, we've got it under control. He's not going to press any buttons. You have to be absolutely clear about how dangerous Donald Trump is. And as a mark or an empty vessel for people or organizations like the Heritage Foundation, in fact, there are 70 far-right advocacy groups that have come together to write Project 2025. Trump doesn't read it. He's not interested in it. He has no interest in policy. For him, it's all personal. It's just about retribution, people that have wronged him. He was talking about shutting down NBC and MSNBC the other day and having them taken off the airwaves for not supporting him. This is what we can look forward to. And if that WAPO ABC poll is even close to correct, we have a big problem in this country. Everything that we know to be normal will change. All of the pillars of society, from criminal justice through healthcare and education. I mean, he wants to shut down the Board of Education. He doesn't want to have people educated. It is just terrifying, Mark. And, you know, I'd like to have some levity in our conversations occasionally, but on this subject, I just can't find it funny anymore.
Well, and you point to a poll, and as you, I think, correctly say, you know, polls are, you know, you can't hang too much on the hook of a poll. On the other hand, the constellation of polls, the collection of polls that are pointing the way you're suggesting, dangerous way, that Trump's viability as a candidate is real.
Yeah.
That has to give you a pause. What has our politics in this country, and it's interesting to talk to someone who, you know, wasn't born here. Has our politics struck you as now just been, it's so toxified, we're so dug in, we're so siloed in terms of our information that this actually may come to pass just based on the fact that there's no real information getting in?
Well, someone said to me the other day, you know, maybe America gets what it deserves. You know, maybe we do need a second Trump presidency. Maybe the country does need to be burned down, you know, the systems and the institutions burned down, because you could argue that they're not great in the first place. You could argue that the justice system needs reforming and you know, police brutality, like various things that we are unhappy with, that we would like to see more evolution in terms of change that Joe Biden is not really able to get to because there's so much to do. And the problem is Trump makes a compelling argument. You know, he says it's all corrupt, it's all this, it's all that. Let's just shut it all down and you know, they want to rebuild it in his image. So it'll be a far-right Christian nationalist version where, you know, education will go back to having God in class and people will be taught a religion in school. You know, maybe the US has just taken itself for granted. You know, it's such a young country. I think this is what people forget, is that, you know, the US hasn't been around long enough to have been through all of this drama. And the UK and certainly, you know, European nations have been around for so many years that they've been through this in the past. We've seen uprisings and revolutions and insurrections and all of these things. They've come and gone through history. But the US, what, 9/11, January 6th, I mean, I'm talking about now recent history, excluding the Civil War. I mean, there haven't been these kind of huge moments in history that bring about change. So look, I'm not rooting for Donald Trump, please understand that. But, what's it going to take for American exceptionalism to be what's the word? I want it to be undone.
A cold slap in the face.
Well, I want it to be undone. I don't
right.
want people to take America for granted. And American exceptionalism, where people say we are the greatest country in the world, it stops people from being conscious about the fact that a fascist dictator can take over the country and lock up his political opponents and put LGBTQ plus people and minorities on the back burner. And I mean, it would just be awful, and yet people are saying, well, Biden's too old, so maybe Trump's looking like a better alternative. I mean, what are you, nuts?
Yeah, I don't know what, as you say, one has no moorings whatsoever when it comes to, actually getting this country to a more righteous place. And the other, you can say what you want about Biden. I mean, and as someone who falls on the progressive spectrum on many issues, he doesn't go far enough, but he is certainly, not a whiff of the authoritarian that Donald Trump clearly wants to be. I mean, the sucking up to authoritarians that Trump was doing was embarrassing. It was shameful. I was ashamed for him.
Like no one else liked him. European leaders thought he was an idiot. And whereas people like Vladimir Putin, who's obviously a former KGB agent, he knows to say nice things to Trump, to make Trump, connect with him. Kim Jong-un the same, Xi Jinping the same, Viktor Orban the same, Erdogan in Turkey. All of these dictators, they connected with Trump and Trump connected with them. But, I wanted to say something to you, Mark, which is like I've been thinking a lot about this kind of polarization. And I wish the Democrats would make more of the fact that their message is live and let live. Like if you want to vote Democrat, if you want to have progressive thinking, we say you just do whatever you want. Just don't make me do it. That's basically what it boils down to. You want to have an abortion, have an abortion. Don't force me to have an abortion. If you this is kind of the how it works. You want to worship a god, you want it to be Allah, you want it to be somebody else, it doesn't matter. Just do it yourself. Don't force me to do it. And that live and let live attitude, I think, is a really easy thing to market. I think people can understand that, get on board with it. Now, the Republican version of that is, you got to be a Christian or you're not a proper American, a white Christian or you're not a proper American, and you can't abort a baby or a fetus, I should say. That is inappropriate. It's not what God would want, and all of this kind of religious extremism. And that really, for me, is the difference. The only area that this argument comes undone is like gun control, because if Democrats were like live and let live, they'd be like, yeah, have a gun, shoot up a school, do whatever you like. It's the moral compass that is the difference, and that's why it's so nuanced and such a difficult debate to have, because that live and let live attitude it comes with caveats. So it's not quite as simple as, I might say.
Sure. And I'll push back. I mean, I essentially agree with everything you said, but this is the pushback you would get, might be a better way to put it. Yeah. This live and let live party is making me vaccinate, is making me wear a mask. It kind of falls into the same category, I would suggest, as the gun control thing. Yeah. The party's doing that because of public safety and because of research that we have to this point. Now, the research may ultimately prove incorrect, or we may have to modify it, but that's where this stuff is coming from. Still, from a live and let live standpoint, they go, hey, you keep talking about the authoritarian fascism. You're all over me when COVID hit, and you're still all over me on other issues as well.
But 1 million people died in COVID in the US. This is the difference, isn't it? It's like public safety. I think collective responsibility really is the answer to this, because it's the same with the Green Revolution. No one must say Green New Deal. I mean, don't say those words. It's so offensive to people. But, if you haven't looked out the window recently, the planet is burning. And so, how much fire and brimstone do we need to experience for people to kind of get on board with the idea of collective responsibility for climate change? And it's the same with a pandemic. The plan for dealing with a pandemic had been written years and years ago. They didn't just make it up. It wasn't something that the CDC just decided at the 11th hour. This has been the plan all along. You try and get a vaccine together. And they did it in record time. And it was the skepticism that caused the conspiracy theories. How's it possible to do it so quickly? It must be a bioweapon. They're going to inject me and it'll make me vote Democrat. I mean, these were the conspiracy theories that people were putting out there. And unfortunately, bad news travels fast. And so it's just unfortunate that we had a pandemic the same year as an election year, right? Because Trump only cared about getting reelected. And instead of using the pandemic to bring us all together, which anybody with half a brain would have done, he actually used it to divide us. And so,
I didn't mean to interrupt, but the varnishing of the history of COVID from Trump at the time, that it's going to go away. Even his own, he was in mortal danger. He was close to death, apparently, based on the Hutchinson book.
Well, he looked terrible when he got up on that balcony and did that very kind of dramatic removal of the mask and looking to the moon. And he looked like an authoritarian. In fact, apart from him standing with the Bible outside the church he'd never been to before across Lafayette Square, I have never seen him looking more like an autocrat than when he did on that balcony and removed the mask and kind of had this strongman pose. Those moments in American political history for me are the most terrifying because, that's who he wants to be. It's in those moments of weakness where he tries to faux strength that we see who he really is. I mean, this is a guy that wanted military parades because they do it in North Korea and he thought it would look good here. I mean,
he got it. He got the military parade. It's amazing that he got it, but I didn't think he'd get the military parade. I didn't think he'd get the wall funding. He essentially jackhammered the wall funding out of the Pentagon. He couldn't get a decent, regular, straight through the front door appropriations on the wall. So he found the money elsewhere. He's
a piece of work.
Brutal. He's a piece of work. Oh, last thing before, there it is, the 5-minute news with Anthony Davis. You can find it every day. And then he does the weekend show on the Midas Network also. Midas Network is huge. Anthony Davis is a big deal.
Bless you. I actually have a new show on Wednesdays, which I'm going to be doing in about half an hour, called Uncovered, where I partner with Ron Filipkowski, who is a former federal prosecutor. And now he exposes the far right. And he has a wonderful Twitter where he's kind of posting all day and every day. He listens to podcasts and watches videos and goes to rallies, places that you and I would be terrified to even go to. He's made us stronger stuff than I am. Anyway, I do an hour with him every Wednesday now on the Midas Media Network. And
that's great. Okay, so we'll watch for that on Wednesdays. And what's that called again?
It's called Uncovered.
Uncovered. I love it. Well, we love our visits with you. We want more. So there's a lot to talk about. In fact, there are a bunch of viewer questions that I'll put them to the side for maybe your next visit, which I hope will come, as I say, as soon as you can manage it. Thank you, Anthony.
My pleasure. Great to see you.
Anthony Davis, everybody. Love it. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.